What's going on, guys? Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Alexa, good morning. Devin, Max, Michael, Veronica. Hello, hello, hello. While we wait, guys, open your sorry, it's Monday. Open your Canvas to pages entitled cholesterol and fat. They're actually two separate pages, but nonetheless, you will need them. Let me see here. Give me 1 second. 1 second. 1 second. 1 second. All right. Tanya, Marina, good morning. Okay. A couple of announcements here while I open these pages up. Hopefully you guys are opening up the same pages. We're going to talk about cholesterol a little bit, then we'll get into fat and kind of how fat, what fat does to cholesterol. But with that said, a couple of things. First and foremost, next Wednesday, not this Wednesday, but next Wednesday, there's no class, right? That's November the 11th, which is Veterans Day. So college is closed, no classes, no nothing going on. So we'll wrap up this unit today, Wednesday, and then a week from today, Monday, and then we'll have Wednesday off. And then after that, it's only like, oh gosh, I don't know, maybe 3-4 weeks of instruction because Thanksgiving is just around the corner. And then once we get back from Thanksgiving, it's pretty much the last week of instruction. So stay on top of your stuff. For the most part, you guys have been really good. I'm good today, by the way, Ellie. If I pronounced that right. Hope I did. Stay on top of your stuff because, you know, if you have like that semester long project or term paper or group project or what have you, then, you know, running into Thanksgiving, not having that done is going to make for a painful Thanksgiving and a really rough returning from Thanksgiving. So with that said, stay on top of your stuff because the semester is going to end before you know it. Ellie, good. Thank you. I'm glad I pronounced that correct. And Andrew, great question. Will we be having a final for this class? No. Normal situation, it would be based on your grade. And I know that probably sounds incredibly unfair, but I had professors in college where like I had an A or a B or even a C, and the finals like 15% of your grade or 20% of your grade. I'm like, really? So for 90% of the class, I have an A, a B, or a C, but in one day I could basically bomb the class because I have a bad test. I hated that kind of format. So typically what I would do, like if we were in class, the people with a C or lower would be taking the final. A's and B's wouldn't have to take the final. And that's just because they've shown that they know the material. C's, I look as you have one more chance to show me you know the material. And obviously D's and F's, you're trying to save your life. Or save your class, I should say. So anyways, no, we won't be having a final, and you're welcome. It's good for everyone, right? Okay, let's talk cholesterol really quickly here, and then we're going to talk about fat. So hopefully you're on the cholesterol page. So cholesterol, here's the deal with cholesterol. Your body makes cholesterol. Your liver produces cholesterol. There are two types of cholesterol that your liver produces. Again, we produce it, but we also consume it when we consume food. Two types of cholesterol your body produces, LDL and HDL. Those numbers together combine for your total cholesterol, which, we'll talk about all of it. So let's start with LDL. LDL stands for low density lipoprotein. And all we really need to know about LDL is when you think LDL, think low down and dirty, low density lipoprotein, think low down, think bad. So this is the type of cholesterol that's the really waxy substance that wants to build up on your arterial walls. This is the type of cholesterol that's responsible for cardiovascular disease, the type of cholesterol that's responsible for the thickening of the blood, the type of cholesterol that's responsible for a number of cardiovascular ailments, right? You have peripheral artery disease, PAD, you have congestive heart failure, high blood pressure. There's a number of cardiovascular disease indicators, and LDL plays a role in all of that. HDL, high density lipoprotein. Think high density, think high road, think good. So this is the type of cholesterol that we want, because what high density lipoprotein does is it attaches itself to low density lipoprotein and will bring it back to the liver for recycling, right? This is your liver basically is the site of very important metabolism role, especially when it comes to fat. Your liver plays a very important metabolic role. So low density lipoprotein bad, high density lipoprotein good, and together these numbers make your total cholesterol. So both high density and low density and even total cholesterol, they're measured in milligrams per deciliter. You don't really need to know much more than that, other than what the optimal numbers are. So if you're looking at the page entitled cholesterol, low density lipoprotein, the optimal number is less than 100 milligrams per deciliter. So once you start getting into like 110, 120, that's marginally high, 130, 150, 160. I mean, there's some people that have LDLs that are as high as 200. That's significantly high. Okay, so those are not optimal. The optimal number is less than 100 milligrams per deciliter. High density lipoprotein is something that we want to foster, we want to develop, we want to make sure that we have enough of, because what happens is if you have a really high LDL and a very low HDL, now you're at a significantly elevated cardiovascular risk. In other words, the people who have really high LDLs and low HDLs, or when their HDL numbers drop for a long period of time, they're at a significant risk for like a stroke, a heart attack, that type of stuff, right? So that number is 60 milligrams per deciliter. So we want to stay in the 60 to 70, 75, 80 milligrams per deciliter. Again, we need that ratio to be relatively healthy, because the HDL is grabbing LDL and bringing it back to the liver for recycling. It's allowing your body to metabolize the fat, to use the fat, or to waste the fat. In other words, expel the fat, get rid of it. Those two numbers, obviously, if you add up 100 milligrams per deciliter, optimal number for LDL, 60 milligrams per deciliter, optimal number for HDL, our number is 160. So the optimal number for total cholesterol is under 200 milligrams per deciliter. That's all we really need to know about cholesterol. We need to know that there's some bad, there's some good. And frankly, with LDL and HDL, the only other thing to be concerned with, which is we'll talk about in a minute, how fat affects it. There's only a couple ways to really improve your HDL. The first and foremost would be eating a heart-healthy diet, which we'll talk about in a minute, which actually includes fat. Don't think that it doesn't include fat. Good morning, Samantha. It does include fat. The primary way to increase your HDL is through exercise, right? Through strength training. So again, I can't stress it enough. Everything around your health revolves around diet and exercise. I mean, we've known this for years. And you can argue the numbers all you want. You can argue all of the science that have come out in the last 30, 40 years, but your grandmother knew it. Your grandparents knew it. Diet and exercise, man. Diet and exercise. Okay, so let's go to, if you click previous on your page, it'll go to fat. Okay, so let's talk fats real quick. A couple things about fats. Primarily 4 categories that we're going to talk about today. I mean, there's other things involving fat, and you'll get into that a little bit today with your lecture assignment. But here's the meat and potatoes. The meat and potatoes is this. Saturated fat isn't necessarily bad for you, but a diet high in saturated fat can be. Okay, so what do I mean by that? Saturated fat, your first fat listed, is primarily found in animal-based sources like chicken skin, poultry, meats and cheeses, high dairy or high fat dairy, milks, cottage cheeses, things like that, right? It does occur naturally in palm and coconut as well, and palm and coconut oils as well. Diets high in saturated fat. Okay, I'm saying this as careful as possible, and I'm going to explain what I mean. Diets high in saturated fat will raise LDL, will increase your chances of cardiovascular disease, and can increase your chances of cancer, primarily colon cancer. So how is it that a diet high in saturated fat does these bad things, but I'm sitting here telling you that saturated fat's not bad? Because a diet high in saturated fat is relative to other things. So if you have a diet that's high in saturated fat, that's relative to bread and cereal and juice and soda, you're going to have a raised LDL. You're going to have a significant risk, cardiovascular risk. You're going to have a higher cancer risk, primarily because those diets have a tendency to be very low in fiber. So I just want to make the important distinction here. Saturated fat technically isn't bad for you. As a matter of fact, an egg is probably one of the most perfect things you can eat. Super nutrient dense, bioavailable nutrients and micronutrients and cofactors and macronutrients. Beef is one of the most nutrient dense foods that you can eat. Liver is probably the most nutrient dense food that you can eat. All animal based. And if you eat liver and eat beef, is your cholesterol going to shoot through the roof? No. Is your cholesterol going to shoot through the roof if with that liver and beef and chicken and all these other things, all you're doing is eating bread and crackers and pasta and things of that nature? Yeah. You need the fiber to help push those things through, especially when we talk about colon cancer. So again, a diet high in saturated fat could lead to cardiovascular disease, but consuming meat doesn't necessarily put you at risk of cardiovascular disease. I hope that makes sense. Our next fat, monounsaturated. These are primarily the fats that we find in plant-based sources, things like avocados, nuts, nut butters, olives, olive oil. All of these are part of the, kind of what we refer to as the Mediterranean diet, which is a very heart-healthy diet. It lowers LDL, it lowers inflammation, and probably because these are coming from plant-based sources. I mean, it makes sense. We don't want to consume a ton of processed foods. We don't want to consume a ton of breads and cereals and tortillas and juices and drinks and liquid calories. We don't want those. Healthy meats, healthy vegetables, Plant-based foods are all very, very good for us. And if you're consuming those things, you're going to be just fine for the most part. For the most part, if you're maintaining your weight, that's an important thing to distinguish. Even if you're eating healthy and you eat too much and you gain weight, now you're at an elevated risk for some issues, right? So find a way to incorporate more monounsaturated fats into your diet. Having olive oil-based salad dressings, snacking on nuts throughout the day. Any nut, cashew, pistachio, almond, what have you, any nut will be fine. Just keep in mind that nuts are very calorically dense. You can consume a lot of calories by eating a couple of handful of nuts. So just be careful of that. But the good thing is they're satiating. They have fiber. They're energy dense. They have protein. So nuts are good for you. So find a way to start incorporating some more plant-based fats into your diet. Have some guacamole, dude. Who doesn't like guac? Okay, so polyunsaturated, broken down into omega-3 and omega-6. Omega-3 is probably the powerhouse fat that if you're not getting enough of, I would recommend maybe supplementing. Omega-3 is the fat that we find in fatty fish like salmon, mackerel, sardines, anchovies. You will find omega-3s in some seeds and nuts like chia seeds and things of that nature. But omega-3 is a powerful anti-inflammatory. It's a powerful anti-cancer. It does a good job of quelling the inflammation in the body. So much so that, like I said, if you don't think you're getting enough omega-3 in your diet, I would supplement. Find a good krill oil, a good fish oil. I mean, there's plenty at Costco and grocery stores all around. Not a bad thing to supplement. Omega-6 is another, Costco does have those. They have the krill oil, the red ones, and they're good. They don't leave that like burpy stuff in your throat where you feel like you've eaten a tuna fish for 4 days in a row, kind of gross. Omega-6, there's a lot of confusing studies around omega-6, and that really is has to do with the fact that we don't really understand the relationship between omega-3 and omega-6. In other words, there's some studies that indicate if you consume too much omega-6 and not enough omega-3, you're at an elevated cancer risk. And me personally, I have a tendency to believe that. Why? Because omega-6 is corn-based, soybean-based. It's added into mayos and dressings and things of that nature. And the reason why it is because essentially it acts as a filler. It doesn't act as food. It acts as a filler. It acts as a preservative. It acts as just a food additive. And those are the things that we want to stay away from. Having packaged foods with 80 ingredients, generally not good, right? Not good. That's kind of my rip against tortillas. Go down to the end cap and start looking at the tortillas, start flipping them over. And I'm sorry, there's just too many tortillas with 50 ingredients, half of which you don't even know how to pronounce. We shouldn't be consuming that. Get the tortillas that you have to cook your own. The ones that they have, read them. They have 4 ingredients. It's like flour, water, salt, and something else. Way better for you than some of those other tortillas out there. The other thing is corn and soybean are largely used products. If you look at, again, the ingredients on the back of whatever packaged food you get, you will see corn oil, soybean oil, hydrogenated vegetable oil, hydrogenated this. We want to stay away from those. Those are not good. Those are highly processed foods, and your body just doesn't understand it, doesn't wrap its head around it. And there's a lot of studies that are indicating that these hydrogenated oils are actually what cause obesity. They cause insulin resistance. Like if you have issues with weight, you have issues with your metabolism. If you have issues with your metabolism, it's probably your diet. I mean, it can be a lack of exercise, but it's probably your diet. I mean, most people I know who are in fitness and health, they'll tell you, you get a six pack in the kitchen, you don't get it in the weight room. So staying away from omega-6, staying away from the dressings, the mayos, and all that kind of stuff. We don't need that stuff. And then lastly, trans. Excuse me. Trans is the fat that trans fat is what we want to absolutely stay away from. Excuse me. Trans fat is the fat that we find in fried food, donuts, French fries, deep fried burritos, chips, packaged goodies, things of that nature. The kicker about trans fat is not only is it cooked at such a high level that the molecular structure of the food is bastardized. Your body doesn't even recognize it as food. Donuts have no nutritional value at all. They're completely empty calories. And that's because it's cooked at such a high temperature, but it's also using flour that's already been cooked and processed, right? Like white flour, just so you know, flour's not white. Right? Wheat is not white. Even oats aren't white. Those are made white via the processing. They're bleached, right? They're sanitized. And then we deep fry that. Not good. And so what's happening is simultaneously your LDL is going to rise when you consume trans fat. Your LDL is going to rise and your HDL is going to lower. Now we're at a significant risk, right? We have that really waxy, sticky, thick, fatty blood going around in our system, and we don't have any of that HDL to kind of regulate that, at a significant risk for cardiovascular disease, okay? So again, saturated fat, primarily animal-based, monounsaturated fat, primarily plant-based, polyunsaturated fat, we find occurring both in plants and animals. However, we want to stay with the omega-3 and we want to avoid the omega-6. And then trans fat, just avoid at all costs. I mean, I get it. French fries are bomb, dude, right? I love French fries. But it's not something that you should be consuming regularly. Donuts are great, but again, not something that you should be consuming on a regular basis at all. Donuts make my blood feel like syrup. Yeah. And they just ultimately don't satisfy. I think most people, if they have donuts in like an hour, they're hungry again. And that's not how we should be eating. So anyways, avoid the processed foods in general. And for those of you who are struggling with your weight, avoiding processed foods, many of you probably need to do it now and for like a long period of time. So what do I mean? I mean, get all the juice out of your house. Get all the milk out of your house. Get all the bread out of your house. Get all the cereal out of your house. Get all the tortillas, crackers, cookies, chips. Get them all out of your house. Even look at your like Coffee Mate. Coffee Mate has hydrogenated oil in it. Get rid of it. There's healthier alternatives, and it takes some planning, but if you get rid of those foods, almost immediately, many of you will start shedding weight. I've done this myself. I've known people who've done this myself. Why milk, Alexa? Because, Angel, what do you mean make a list? Do you want me to make a list? Why milk? Because it's liquid calories. And I'm not saying milk is bad, right? Of what to get rid of. Okay, here's what you absolutely have to get rid of. Let me type it in here. Get rid of bread. Get rid of tortillas. Get rid of cereal. Get rid of any and all liquid calories. And that's why I say milk, Alexa, not because I think milk is necessarily bad, but when I'm in the gas station the other day and I see a kid that's probably 8 years old and he weighs like damn near 200 pounds, Um, yeah, he should probably not have milk for a little bit if he's a large milk drinker. In general, do I think it's bad? No, I don't in general think it's bad. But the bottom line is, if you were to write down your food, right? And I would encourage you to do this. If you write down your food, everything you eat, everything that you consume, I'd be willing to bet that most of you have in the upwards of 80% of your calories coming from carbohydrate. That's the problem. Yeah, 9 years old and weighing 150 pounds, that's heavy, dude. That's just heavy. I mean, and it's not that what's crazy about it is it's not people say, well, he's, genetics. It's not genetics. I mean, for some people, there's a genetic component for sure. I have a good friend of mine. She's been overweight her entire life. She has a muscle disease. She doesn't metabolize things that well. She's going to be overweight. She has been her entire life, and she will be for the rest of her life. She's one of my best friends. But most people, it's not. It's food, man. It's just the wrong type of food. And you get to the point where your body, we'll talk about this in the next unit, but what makes your body able to use sugar is insulin. Okay. Insulin comes from your pancreas, right? It's produced, it's a hormone, and it acts as a catalyst. It acts as a catalyst for us to use that sugar. When we consume too much sugar, you throttle that pancreas down and you put it into overdrive. It's just like you redline in your engine. And if you don't put oil in it, and if you don't take care of it, you keep redlining that engine, redline, pop. It doesn't work anymore. The same thing goes for insulin. And we see that with people I see people at the gym working out as hard as they can, and they're still fat. I mean, I hate to say it, but they're still overweight. They have a ton of body fat on them. And it's dietary, man. It's a metabolism issue. And it's because you've consumed so many carbohydrate for so long that you've retarded your ability to now use that sugar as fuel, and your body is now storing it, right? It's a metabolic disorder. A lot of people are starting to throw around the term insulin resistant. I don't necessarily know, but what I do know is this. About 3 years ago, I went on a no carbohydrate binge for multiple weeks. I want to say maybe 3 weeks. No sodas, no liquid calories at all, no milk. I had no bread, no simple carbohydrate at all. I did have some potatoes, but potatoes are actually really good for you. And that was pretty much the only carbohydrate that I had. And inside of 8 days, I had people saying, dude, you've lost some weight. And I go to the scale, and I lost inside a week, I lost 10 pounds. And I think a lot of people will realize that if they were to eliminate just these 4 or 5 things, no more sweet coffee drinks, no more cereal at all. And you don't have to do it for the rest of your life. Just do it for a couple of weeks. And here's the crazy thing that I realized when I did this, and I'll give you your assignment after this. We'll leave on this note. I remember after I did that, I had my no carb 2-3 week period. And I was dragging ass one day. I had a night class. I had my Tuesday night class, and I stopped by Chevron, and I actually picked up a Red Bull. And I cracked it, and I took a sip, and I spit it out. I spit it out because it was so sweet that I couldn't even stand it. And I remember thinking, wow, we consume so much carbohydrate that we've totally distorted what our sense of sweet is. In other words, the more you consume sweet, the more sweet you need to taste sweet, if that makes sense. And it's the same thing with salt. If you've ever had an unsalted cracker, you're like, oh, what the hell is that? Your taste buds can get distorted. They're malleable. And if you're, again, day after day, having 70, 80, 60% of your calories come from carbohydrate, not only are you destroying your metabolism, but you're destroying your ability to taste. what you're eating, right? If that makes sense. Okay, so here's your assignment. I want you to define what fat is, dietary fat. Sorry, it's Monday. Okay, so define what dietary fat is, and list what its benefits are, right? Or what your body, how your body uses fats. And then I want you to define LDL, define HDL, and define TC, which is total cholesterol. Okay, so pretty simple assignment. Define what dietary fat is, and list its benefits. Yes, dietary fat and its benefits, and then just define what low density lipoprotein is, high density lipoprotein is, and total cholesterol. Okay, questions? No? All right. Hey, vote and stay out of the streets because it might pop off, dude. You never know, right? I'm kidding, but stay home. All right. See ya.